Be different so that people can see you clearly amongst the crowds. And in today's episode, I dive deeper with my amazing guests on how to own your identity and your evolution as a practitioner. Hey, I'm Amanda, and welcome to the Best Damn Coach podcast, where I will teach you how to coach yourself, how to coach your clients, and how to run your coaching business. The number one goal of this show, though, is to help you be the best damn coach you can be so your clients go out and tell the world about you. So let's do the damn thing. Welcome, friends. And before we get started with this week's guest, the lovely Irene Pace, I wanted to talk about a struggle that I hear from clients often through their journey of growing their coaching business. And it's this: how do I stand out when so many others are doing what I do? You hop on social media, listen to podcasts, see books, see all this content being created by other practitioners in your space, and it feels frustrating, discouraging, and sometimes you even have that inner thought of, like, is this really all worth it? I want to help you stand out. And I've created a live training walking you through 3 of the biggest mistakes I see coaches making that are stopping them from standing out. And of course, I'm going to offer you a step-by-step solution so that you stand out in a crowded marketplace of other coaches who just don't have the gifts you specifically have to offer. So head on over to amanda-walker.com/masterclass. You can sign up for this free training whenever it is most convenient for you. And let's help you stand out in 2023 so you can make more money without spending ridiculous amounts of money on marketing. Welcome to the BDC show. You guys, I'm really excited to talk with a fellow health nut, evolved. Really excited about the conversation. We're going to talk about behavior, adherence, and also dive into this whole word coach and what it really means and maybe the meaning it's lost and gained over the years. So I'm so excited to be joined by Irene Pace. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here with you.
Yeah. So I think we met 3-ish plus years ago. I was invited to this amazing retreat/conference far away in Canada. And I just remember I knew one person going into this, and I love feeling uncomfortable like that and meeting all these new amazing women. But literally they put you on a bus and drive you into the tiny little town. I don't even know the name of the town. It was just adorable. It was everything from movies I'd ever imagined, but it was basically camp for female entrepreneurs. And so we stay in bunk beds. We do all these amazing water sports. You get to be active and outdoors and, of course, connect with really cool women. And I got to connect with you. And so here we are now.
Yes, here we are with the COVID gap in between. It's hard to keep timelines sometimes, right?
Yeah, it all merges together for sure. So I want you to share a little bit about who you are and what you do with our audience. So maybe if you could give us a little bit of a synopsis of where you started and what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I started in the professional nutrition space. So trained as a clinical registered dietitian through school. Always knew I wanted health, and I think I could have landed on any number of things, but landed on nutrition. And from there, started my career in the clinical nutrition world in hospital and primary care clinics. And doing that work, after I did that for a little while, I came to realize that there were some gaps in what we were doing to help people make change. I was really focused in on the change part of it. So we'd have this gold standard diet that you'd hand to somebody based on a diagnosis and then realize like dude's not even eating a vegetable. Like I can't move them from 0 vegetables to like the Mediterranean diet in 1 or 2 sessions and expect that any human could possibly make that happen. And so it felt like I was this point of failure for clients, like over and over and over again. They'd come in and I'd pump them up. They'd leave motivated, feeling like they had a plan, but really out the door, life would hit them and they didn't have the support to then move them from that plan into it being part of their life. So fast forward through, I took a number of career sort of shifts from moved to public health for a little while, worked at the university here locally for me, University of Waterloo for a little while, and then on to the online nutrition coaching space. And once I got there, I got to see the value of having an easy, regular point of contact for people through the technology. So that's what I'm doing now, is doing coaching work. It's a little less about the nutrition side of things in terms of, less about the nutritional science and more about your nervous system, which I know we're going to kind of dive into, but more on the behavior psychology side, change process.
Cool. And one of the things that you and I both are passionate about is understanding that anybody can hand you a meal plan and anybody can say, here's the paperwork. Yeah, eat your vegetables, eat your lean proteins, make that balanced plate. And then we go out into the real world. And as you said, a lot of life happens in the sustainability, the adherence piece is where we need the greatest support. So I'm curious from your perspective, what made you start geeking out on that part specifically and move away from kind of the templated structure, which is a great starting point, by the way. Like, I think for many people that are in the health and nutrition space, this is the stepping stone. Okay, let me have the core knowledge. And then what happens, at least this happened for me, is when you actually start working with people, you see that the gap has not, like the problem is nothing to do with food and everything to do with all the other stuff that happens. So I'm assuming something similar happened, or maybe you have a story or something that really was like the aha moment of pivoting for you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I have a story. I have a story. And it goes something like this. This is like the inflection point that had me really make a big shift to be, taking a deep dive down this behavior change, what's going on side of things. And it was a late drive home alone in my car. And I was with Donuts and I in the car. And I was coming home from a friend's house. It was a season of my life there where there was a lot of really high stress things all colliding at the same time. And I found myself, despite my, at that point, probably 15 years of work in the nutrition space, all my knowledge, all of the things, I would spend my days helping people solve their nutrition stuff. And there I was alone in the car at night, and I made 3 stops. I ate 5 donuts, 2 Haagen-Dazs bars, and I was like sobbing into this pile of rainbow sprinkles in my car going, what is going on? This is not about knowing what to eat. This is not about knowing. There's something else going on here, because if it was about knowing the stuff, I wouldn't be here. I knew the stuff. So that was a big turning point for me, where I kind of started diving down into my own, therapy, meditation, connecting with coaches myself, trying to look at how do I get to the bottom of what's going on here? Because I know this is going on for me. I can see that it's happening in all kinds of other places where smart people who have the knowledge still land in trouble with food. So that was the start of what brought me to sort of the method and where I am now in terms of my work.
Cool. And I think everybody listening has a story similar or is experiencing stories to that. For you, it's donuts. For me, it was gluten-free Oreos, which are still like a point of contestment for me there. I'm constantly having to coach myself through those. And I think too, this just gives perspective, is even though we've walked this, we teach this, I think we would both admit we hold high integrity of ourselves to walk the walk. We are imperfect humans. And the reason we do the work we do is because we need it first and foremost. And I just feel like I have to remind listeners of that, especially because you are all coaching people that are listening. And sometimes that I can't lead my people because I'm not perfect. I'm not far enough along. It's this ugly version of imposter syndrome that shows up in our heads. And my feedback is this is exactly why you should be leading, because you are in the mud and you know what it's like to sit in your car and be tempted by the donuts.
You got it. And I think those points of vulnerability, or people say, that greatest weakness lies alongside your greatest strength. I mean, people hear me talk about it and they know I get it because I've lived it. I know that space. I know what it's like to have food pulling at you. And where I've gone now with it is I still have food pulling at me. That's still the default way my stress shows up, is I have this pull to food. Now, instead of it being this thing I wish away or hate or dread or feel is broken about me, it's an incredible gift, because what more tangible way can I be called in to tune into what's going on for me? Right. Every time you feel the pull to your thing, it can become this little signal on your dashboard, like an indicator on your dashboard that says, pay attention, there's something here to look at. And you can use it at that point to kind of tune in instead of it being something that you wish away,
Yeah. Well, on
Yeah.
that note, I would love to keep diving in. Can we talk and speak to the nervous system a little bit and regulation of the nervous system? Why does the nervous system matter when it comes to eating the donuts in the car or whatever that thing is?
Yeah. So the easiest way to look at this first is from an evolutionary point of view. So our nervous system, we have older parts of our nervous system and more evolved, sort of newer parts of our nervous system. And the oldest parts of this nervous system, and I'm not talking about your brain, I'm talking about all of these nerves that innervate kind of from the neck down, like down in your body. They live up in your brain, but they work down here in your felt sense of the world. And the oldest part of our brain is, you can call it like your lizard brain. And when you get a stress response that is perceived as life-threatening danger, lizard brain turns on and you get this freeze response. So energy drains from the system and you're immobilized. Next on the evolutionary ladder is your fight or flight one, the one we hear about where you get sort of anxious or jittery or you feel like you've got to move. This is like a mobilized stress response where defenses come on because you perceive a threat. It's not a life-threatening threat, but there's danger of some sort. And then the most evolved part of us, the newest part of our nervous system, is what's called the ventral vagal. You don't need to remember the name, but this is our most evolved part. And this one is our most human part, the part of us that gets activated and allowed us to evolve to work together. So this part allowed us to team up and tool up. So to function really well in the world, we have to spend as much time as possible, ideally, in this connected space so we can work together and we can feel comfortable in the company of other humans so we can survive. What happens over time, usually stemming from your childhood experiences, you wire in certain kinds of responses related to the stressors that happen in your life. And when you get that stress system activated, you then have a drive to calm it back down and bring you back up into that regulated, connect with other human space. So, long story to say, one of the things that works to regulate and calm you back down is eating. So when you get some type of stress response at some point in your life, you learned to use food to calm yourself back down, to regulate or shift that response. You learn to use food because it works, not because you're bad or broken or there's something wrong with you. You actually landed on a solution that worked. And so the nervous system's all about efficiency. Find something that works, you store it, and then you keep using it. And so when you have a stress response now, that pull to food, wherever it was linked in your past, shows up and you get that drive to eat.
Yeah, well said. I love the pictures you like, just the images I get as you talk. I think the point I want to also make and just reiterate here, why do you think, because I hear you, right? Obviously in agreement with everything you say, see it myself, see it in clients. However, we still have a culture of women that still believes the answer is in the quick fix. I'm just going to subscribe to the diet. I'm just going to intermittent fast. I'm just going to, clean out my house and eat only protein and vegetables. I'm just going to, I don't know. Those are the things that come to mind, right? But essentially, I'm just going to modify the food. And that is going to be my answer. I mean, we're out here all talking about this now. At least it's probably because my circle, the health people that I follow and value are obviously of like-minded, like you and myself. But from your perspective, why do you feel that this message still is struggling to connect? Because I still have friends, people around that I still are trying to change the food in their 50s and 60s and haven't quite caught on to this whole idea, like, it's not about the food.
Not about the food. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's probably a number of things. I think one of the big ones I'm coming to realize is we don't get education about this part of us. Like, we all land on the earth with this same biobehavioral hardware, if you want to call it that. Yeah. And no one gives us a manual or a lesson. You don't learn in school like, hey, you have this nervous system that's job it is to kind of sense for danger. And when it feels something's off, you get this kick of hormones, you get this, we don't learn about this system. So what do we do when something is going on inside of us that doesn't make sense? The first thing, if we feel like we're different or other than everybody else, is that we say something's wrong with me. There's something wrong with me. And we get that same message from the world around us who also doesn't understand the way our bodies work. So it's very easy to think that it's just the next diet, or I just haven't found the right diet, or I just haven't found the next superfood, or it's about willpower or determination, because it's kind of a deflection from it being about something being wrong with me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I don't know, I think it's partly understanding and awareness around it. Mm-hmm. And then also the diets and stuff, they work for a short term, right? It's not, you can't say they don't work, because when you have someone who can adhere to making a whole lot of changes in the way they eat, their body responds. Like, you're going to have some weight loss. You're going to probably feel better if you're eating less of the foods that make you feel bad. So we think it works. And then we think the problem is us not being able to continue it, when your physiological state drives your behavior. So it's a surface level solution until we can kind of get down and really shift it from inside,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I agree with you on all those parts. And I also, what comes up as you're talking is, I think the other theme that's under the surface here unconsciously for so many is the belief that changing, I'll call it a limiting belief, that changing external circumstances will bring happiness. And for me, that was a lot of my body journey, and also my clients, is if I hit this look, this weight, this clothing mark, then I can be happy, right? But let's blow this out. This is, if I cross the 7-figure threshold, then I can be happy in my business. If I have well-behaved kids, then I can be happy. And I think this is a lot of at least rewiring work that I've done with clients in the past, and even my entrepreneurs that I'm coaching, is to understand, like, you can want that goal and also understand that you can tap into happiness and joy and all those things that you think that external shift will bring you in this moment. And I think that's something that we don't get taught.
Yeah. And the piece that aligns with that, what comes to mind as you're sharing that is this higher level part of us, this higher, more evolved part of our brain that wants to connect. We get locked out of that connection when we have these stress responses firing off inside of us all the time. So the feeling that you can't access, that you're lonely or you're disconnected, or you have this feeling of an inability to really feel engagement with others in a deep way, is driven by the nervous system. So you end up in this loop, right, where you want to connect, but then there's a stress response that gets kicked up in relation to connection with other humans, because there's some history there that creates stress. And then you're locked further out of connection. And then you put more and more food into the system to try to soothe that and solve it and shift it. We get really caught up in this cycle. I think until you're shown, like what you were talking about and what I'm talking about, you're shown that there's another way through this. There's another way out.
I think that is the difference. I'd love to start kind of maybe pivoting towards just talking about coaching and the coaching industry in general, because I think this is a perfect segue. Is, to me, that's the difference between surface level coaching and deeply transformational coaching. I'm going to be honest. When I started coaching, I just didn't know what I didn't know, because some of the coaches that I had been modeled didn't show me what's underneath. I only learned through action, through taking action with my clients. I was like, oh, no, there's a lot more here that I would like to be able to serve my people. And this is where I believe, as consumers, you guys listening, as being coaches, and those of you that are hiring coaches, this is where we have to really start looking with a little bit more of a deep lens at coaches we work with and at coaches that are around us, because it is not an apples to apples comparison out there. And unfortunately, some people can be really great at selling, which you and I were just talking about. And then we get in there and we're like, yeah, but, and I've had those experiences. You've had those experiences. I'm just curious if you have like you want to share your 2 cents on what that looks like.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful how you bring it up in terms of your audience who are coaches and even the coaches who then go out and hire coaches. Like, what are you looking for? How do you evaluate? Because it is tricky. We were talking, I've been sold. Like, I feel like I've been sold and I don't blame the other person. I'm like, here, maybe this is a sales lesson for me to understand how I bought
want
into
to be
this.
great at both. I mean, this is important skills. Like, you want to be an amazing salesperson and you want to be even more of an amazing coach to create results.
Yeah, you want to deliver an extraordinary product and outcome at the other side of making that sale, for sure. That's what feels aligned. And, there's a lot of integrity there that I think gets lost. And I don't think it's always by intention. Like, I think there are folks who are early in the coaching game who, for whatever reason, believe that they've got the answer and they're selling something. And, how do we manage that? I guess the framing that comes to me is there's 2 things you're looking for in a coach. One is the content, right? What are they doing? What is their background in delivering that thing? Do they have a track record or a history of helping others achieve that? Or in the business side, it's so wild when someone's coaching on business and they themselves are not running a business that's right, profitable, successful.
I'm getting like, as you're saying this, like my personal belief is I would never walk my clients through something that I haven't done myself. So it's so important that we watch our people that we're going to work with and ask, are they modeling the life that I would desire? Like, am I hiring somebody that, well, for me, I attract many moms, right? Because one of the things I pride myself on is like a zone of genius for me is I am great at doing both, right? And I want to make that space. But that's not for everybody. Some people could care less. If you're 25 years old and you don't have kids, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And seeing yourself in the person you're hiring or just that, and I don't even like using the word success, but how well are they doing the thing that I'm asking them to help me do? Like, what does that look like? The other piece that's really important here, and I'm going to keep swinging back to the nervous system thing because that's the space I live in, but co-regulating, right? So your coach, you want that point of contact to be someone who helps bring your nervous system down, helps calm you, is a point of regulating for you. Now, there's a healthy balance in that, that there's got to be enough of a push that let me do it this way. This is a framing that I think applies well to this. Is I'll use with clients that I call it a tool, but I don't name my tools very well. And the tool is called, what's the kindest, most loving thing? It's the question. What's the kindest, most loving thing I can do for myself right now? And sometimes the kindest, most loving thing is, you're lying on the sofa and the kindest, most loving thing is to grab a blanket for yourself, grab a pillow and put on a Netflix, series. That's the kindest, most loving thing in that moment. And another moment, the kindest, most loving thing is to get in there and boot your own tush off the sofa to go and do the thing that you're procrastinating to do or afraid to do. So you want your coach to have that same ability to be that for you, be an outside eyes and a point of co-regulating that helps you. Is it helpful? Are you moving more towards the things you want to do? Or are they coaching in a way that you're feeling codependent on them or that they feel that there's so much, hard ass coach in them that you're not going to the calls because you're afraid, subconsciously, you're afraid that they're going to yell at you or you want to find that right tone. So it's the content, the stuff the coach delivers, their experience. And then also, are they a co-regulating force for me? Are they moving me in the direction I want to go in a way that feels good to me?
Yeah, I love that you called that I've heard it, just not in this context. And I think that's so powerful because I always say one of the most important things you can do is hire a coach that leads you back to yourself. Because my gripe with the coaching industry is that there's a lot of coaches saying, do it my way until you're in their way. And a year later, you're like, oh, this doesn't actually feel good to me. Right. So I'm constantly asking my people, like, come back to themselves. Does this feel good? Does this feel like a year from now? This is something, right? Does it feel like you're going to be in your most powerful self doing this thing? And I don't think that that's a universal agreement inside of the coaching industry.
So beautiful. And yes, like recognizing that you have this wisdom inside of you. And I think it's so easy to lose sight of that or believe that something outside of you has the answers for you, when instead, I want to say, if you can give yourself permission to do it, like give myself permission to do it the Irene way, and you give yourself permission to do it, the Amanda way. And we lean into the fact that we have this knowledge inside of us about what's the best way to do it for us. So
I remember
helping people find that.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember this story just popped into my brain. I was probably 2 or 3 years into business, and I actually really was excited about building some sort of passive income funnel inside my business. And I had all the excitement, I had all the ideas. And I remember a coach of mine was like, you don't want to build all those funnels, right? That's laborious. That's exhausting. And so I took her advice and I didn't. And I focused somewhere else, which brought lots of revenue, honestly. Lots of one-to-one coaching was where I focused my energy. Fast forward a year and a half later, and I was like, well, this isn't scalable. And to this day, I'm like angry at myself. I mean, I'm letting it, I've let it go, but I actually ignored my inner guide at that point because I was very excited and I saw the end, right? I saw the scalability and I was like, oh, lesson learned right there. That's what I needed to be able to be a better coach for my people, but also to know there's wisdom that I already know, and I don't have to be in the 8-figure mark or 7-figure mark yet to figure that out. I already knew what I needed from the start.
Yeah. And these things show up in our day-to-day lives. Like, as you were sharing that, an example that comes from me is I've just in the last maybe 2 years really come to see that I have this Irene process that goes something like, I ball my head off and curl up in a ball, and I'm this little hot mess for a short period of time. And then on the other side of it, I go and do something great, right? Like I go and push through some barrier, I blow some glass ceiling, and it was outside eyes from a friend who over a period of time watched me in this little Irene mess. I call it, I'm in the little Irene cave. And he said to me one day, he said, this is your process. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is my process. Because I would fight it, right? I'm not this person. I'm not this messy, this isn't me. This isn't who I want to be. And he would say, every time you have one of these little moments, you move something. And on the other side of it, you do the hard thing. And it's like, yes, we all have those little us things that we fight, right? We fight them. And now when I lean into it, I'm like, all right, here it comes. Something great is going to come on the other side of this.
Yes.
Here it comes. And we move through these things faster by just giving ourselves permission to do it, whatever our way of doing it is,
Yeah, I love that. Well, I want to hit on one more thing before we wrap up, because it was a really powerful thing that you said before we got started. And we were talking about just the label of coach. And I think we're having a discussion with someone, even feeling maybe a little hesitant on using the word coach, which makes me sad because I definitely I love being a coach. I love guiding people. For me personally, I feel like I was put on this earth to help people reach their potential, whatever that looks like for them. But I mean, I agree with you in some ways that there's a little bit of hesitancy from people. And I think that's because there is no tight credentialing. A certification means jack crap. You can have 0 certification and be the most successful, powerful coach out there, ability to facilitate results. But what do you feel like that stems from? Or what maybe a better question is how can we uphold integrity as coaches, knowing that, the coaching industry is not heavy regulated or well regulated, probably a better word.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tricky question. And I do have tension around this, partly because I have this element of me that was, traditionally trained. I trained as a registered dietitian. And then most recently, I let that credential go because it wasn't serving me and serving the population I'm looking after now and how I'm looking after them. Huge identity break to be able to say, I'm not that thing anymore. So how can I just be a coach? Even though, just like you said, the work we do is coaching. When you look at the definition of coaching, it's actually the accurate description of what we're doing. So what's the answer to this? I mean, it's tricky because I think some of it is to educate the consumer as best we can to be able to evaluate, just like we were talking about, what are you looking for? And recognizing that anytime you have someone who's telling you they have all the answers, you're probably in the wrong hands. it always has to be co-created in some way or led by the coach, with the coach recognizing that you hold a unique body of knowledge in that you live in the body and the world that you live in. Nothing can be, handed down as the perfect solution. So I don't know what the solution is, but I know I still pull back from the word coach at times. I think, Amanda, too, there's a piece maybe around women and business here too, that when you say, they're like, oh, you're an entrepreneur? Yeah. Oh, what do you do? Well, I'm a coach. And it's like, in certain entrepreneurial circles, it's like, oh, isn't that cute? You have just a cute little coaching business like you. And it's like, you don't get, like, I change lives for a living, right?
Yeah.
I help you people up there in your big, legitimized businesses do what you do because we clear the stuff out of your way to show up the way
So well
you
said.
invest, right? So I don't know the answer. I mean, I'd love to hear where you are with your thought on this.
I think you nailed it. I think it's educating consumers and educating coaches, though. I mean, our core belief inside of the BDC is that the thing that will withstand the test of time to legitimize yourself as a coach is your ability to facilitate true transformational lasting results. And so everything we do helps coaches do more of that. And so what I would say as a consumer is we have to ask really great questions, right? If we're seeing, let's just go to health because we both spent time there or are spending time there for you, is when we see before and after pictures and that excites you and you're like, I want that thing, then the question to ask is, what was the trajectory to get there? And where are they now, a year later, 2 years later? Can you tell me more about that, right? Because, for me, one of my struggles, and I shared this before we started recording, is we also have a lot of these kind of, let's just say, I'm air quoting, certified health coaches or certified money coaches, which aren't actually coaching. They're selling some sort of a thing, a supplement, food, or crypto. I don't know. There's lots of variations of this, that they're really sales people. And what's bringing them in is the lifestyle change that they would get in being able to monetize the selling of those things. We live in a world that, like, I am so happy for people. Well, all I'm saying is if you're going to do that, then invest in truly understanding people's behaviors and what's happening and guide them. So, hey, let's invest in being part of places that will elevate the integrity of being a coach if you are going to adopt that name.
Yeah, it is. You're right. It's both sides. It's educating coaches how to speak to this. I think if you are a coach that feels like you're working in integrity and you have the qualifications to back what you're telling the client you're able to help them achieve, speak to what else might be on the market, not in the way that you're saying, don't hire them, hire me, but in a way that you can educate the client to say, here are some things you may want to ask if you're talking to other coaches about this. Here's some questions. Here are some things to look for, and be able to help guide them in that. Because even if, and I know you know this as well, when you meet with a client to see if you're going to work together, fit is so critical, right? You're not just looking for a transactional sale because you care about how you spend your days too. So when you're a coach that's working in this space, you want clients that you're excited to get on the phone with. You're excited to hop on the Zoom call with. You're excited to help them get the results they want. And if you sense there's a real transactional nature with a coach, there might be a chance that they're in a space where they're prioritizing finances or there's something else they're prioritizing. And if the coach to client fit isn't there, the thing's just painful for everybody. So fit is so important too, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I don't think it's an overnight solution, but I think these kind of conversations start to create awareness for consumers and coaches to how do we stand out? Well, we serve of the highest capacity, and we share those transformational results in some way. And our people tell us how amazing they are. And we can, share more of that in a private setting, in a public setting, whatever feels congruent for you. And ultimately, that's, I think, how we legitimize, independently each of the works that we do.
Yeah, beautiful.
So please share with the audience where they can connect with you, learn more about your work. If there's any free resources or anything that you feel like would be of value for them, please share away.
Yeah. So best place to find me is on my website, which is www.irenepace.com. So IRENEPACE.com. And then I'm busy on the Instagrams as well, which you can find through the website, or it's irene.pace.nutrition on Instagram right now. And reach out. I mean, if you have questions, I'm in my DMs and I love to respond to what comes there. And yeah, best way to track me down.
Cool. Amazing. Well, I'm honored that we got to reconnect. Thank you for sharing your genius. I know that our conversation will definitely serve the community listening. So thank you for joining.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
One of the most important things you will ever do as a coach is ask questions. So I've put together a simple go-to resource that you can have in your back pocket as a coach of 10 powerful questions I believe every coach should know. So go ahead and head on over to amanda-walker.com/questions to grab yours now.